Welcome to FluteSpresso, sponsored by Flute Specialists. My name is Heather Neuenschwander, and I will be joining us on behalf of Flute Specialists. And I'm so excited to welcome our special guest, Alexa Still. Welcome, Alexa.
Hello, good morning.
Cheers to you. To our audience, perhaps this is your first time joining us, and perhaps you're a FluteSpresso veteran, but either way, I'll give some of the guidelines here. FluteSpresso is a casual coffee chat, and it's not just between Alexa and I. We welcome all of you as viewers to the conversation. That's why we're live. So please do type your comments, your questions into the chat. We so much want you to do that we're going to choose one lucky person from the comments to receive a FluteSpresso mug just like this one, except it is signed by Alexa Still. I wish I had it here to show, but it is fabulous. So please do comment in the chat. Let us know. Maybe start by saying where you're joining from and what you're drinking today. And then any questions that you have for Alexa as we chat. And before we get started, I'm going to just read a little bio about Alexa. Alexa Still is known internationally for her many recordings and as associate professor of flute at Oberlin Conservatory of Music. Originally from New Zealand, Alexa studied in New York, won competitions including the New York Flute Club Young Artist Competition and East and West Artists Competition, and then returned home as principal flute of the New Zealand Symphony Orchestra at the age of 23. Other awards include a Churchill Fellowship and a Fulbright. She eventually left the NZSO to devote more time to solo engagements and teaching, based first at the University of Colorado at Boulder, then the Sydney Conservatorium of Music, and now at Oberlin Conservatory in the United States. Still maintains a busy concert schedule, having presented recitals, concertos, and master classes in England, Germany, Slovenia, Turkey, Mexico, Venezuela, Brazil, Canada, Korea, China, Australia, New Zealand, and across the United States. She has also served her profession as president of the National Flute Association in the United States and regularly contributes articles to flute journals across the globe. Outside of flute playing, Still is an avid motorcyclist. I have questions about that one. And she shares a daughter and two dogs with her husband. Good morning, Alexa. Thank you so much for being here with us today. I'm going to give you a little cheers. Are you ready? Cheers.
Cheers.
Tell us, where are you joining from today and what are you drinking?
I am joining from Oberlin, Ohio. This is actually my office. People who know Oberlin will recognize the funky looking windows. And I am drinking donuts decaf.
You're a decaf person, huh?
Yeah, unfortunately. Why bother coffee, right?
I've said that before, but I will respectfully say, okay. That's fantastic. So one thing I can't help myself because the first thing I really want to talk to you about is your new CD. I have a copy here, this beautiful cover. You just recently released this. How soon has it been now?
The official release date was May 12th. Yeah. It seems a little weird doing it over the summer because, it's like everyone's busy in a way and that sort of stuff. But yeah, new anyway.
Yeah, new to a lot of us. So talk about the CD. Tell us about the CD.
Well, I feel very lucky to have known Valerie for a while now. I'm not entirely sure how that came about actually, but I've always tried to promote music by lesser known composers. And I did a recording of William Grant Still stuff way back in the early 90s. This is when people didn't even know who he was. And I think Valerie must have noticed that or something like that. And then she's asked me a couple of times to read the poetry for her music when she's been performing. I just happened to be there, which I took as an incredible honor. And then she wrote a piece for me in Midtown Flutes, Elegy, which is on the CD. And as soon as there looked like there was enough music to do a CD, I just really wanted to do that. And I have to say, it's been a very drawn out process. CDs usually take a while. I mean, there's the recording part, the preparation recording part, and then there's the editing part. And I typically pick takes. That's where you go through the music and choose the bits you want to have used.
Mhm.
And it's really hard to do that straight away. So it took me about 4 or 5 months to actually get through that. And with the pandemic and everything, it was just really hard. And we did the flute and piano stuff, and then we wanted to do the elegy. And of course, for everybody to be together, that was just, for a while, we couldn't schedule it. It was just like no one knew what was going to be safe and what would be okay. And we finally did it with people wearing masks, including myself. Oh my God, is that hard?
Yeah.
And spread out. So he had to use a conductor, and the piece is written to go without a conductor. But that was really the only option because we were so far apart from each other. And that was the last piece to go on this disc. And I really wanted to include that because I think it's a really great piece. So then there was just other little holdbacks, just administrative stuff. But it's taken quite a while. So I'm just so happy we made it across the finish line. And Valerie, of course, is really happy to have a CD of all her music. I think we're the first CD out of just all Coleman. So I just feel really good about it. I love her music. I think she has something very special to say, and it's just beautiful to listen to. And I was really happy we got the poetry read on this as well. And that was sort of interesting getting the rights sorted out. My Angelo's estate is pretty protective of her stuff. And that took a bit of negotiating. But we did it. We had it happen. And the poetry is read by Oberlin College's president, Carmen Twiley Ambar, goodness, who's I knew she was a great orator, and I asked her to do this thinking she'll say no, but what have I got to lose, right? And she showed up in the studio, and I'd sent her the poetry, but she didn't even have a copy with her. I did, right? So I gave her the copy. She read it once, and she was done. It's crazy. Like I would be, mispronouncing every other word or something. She's just amazing at that stuff. So altogether, I'm really happy we've got it out, and I really believe in it. And yeah, I'm very proud of this one. Yeah.
Yes. So, for those of you who don't know, it is the works by Valerie Coleman, composer and flutist, and she was on FluteSpresso with us some time ago as well. So, a good FluteSpresso welcome to Valerie as well. I'm a big fan of her music as
Yeah.
well, and have been. I think I super fanned when I first met her.
Oh, she's amazing. She's just amazing. Yeah.
Yes. So these are recordings of 5 of her pieces in total that have never been recorded before. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
That
then
surprised me actually. I kind of thought I would be chasing the wagon on that one, but yeah.
yes, yeah, and I'm so thrilled you did. Legends is an intermediate flute piece, and I've had some of my students play it, but there had not been any definitive recordings. So now I can say you have to hear Alexa Still's recording.
Yay.
But in general, Valerie Coleman's music is quite difficult. I imagine it took some time to prepare.
It is complicated. Her writing for flute and piano is most definitely chamber music, right? And her use of rhythm is, I mean, it's really fantastic to listen to, right? There's always a groove of some sort. But sometimes notating that is a little weird. And sometimes her transitions, I mean, I think one of the amazing things about her pieces is that the music moves from one thing to another very freely, and it sounds very organic. But when you start writing that stuff down, from a performer's point of view, it's sometimes pretty hard to figure out what the heck's going on, you know.
Mhm.
So, I mean, I feel very lucky. I had a wonderful collaborator. Evan Hines is a terrific pianist. And Valerie likes him so much, she's flown him out a few times to play with her. She thinks he gets her music, which, you know, that's great.
Yeah, listening to it, I felt like I understand it much better having heard you play it as well. I've prepped these pieces a bit myself, and hearing your
Yeah.
interpretation, it brings a new light to it.
Oh, great.
The poetry is such an important background information that informs many of the pieces. So, was that your idea that the poems had to be included? Was that Valerie's idea? Just
Well, I know from actually reading the poetry for her, which I guess she wanted me to do because she didn't want to have to read and then play,
Mhm,
that she likes the poetry to be there first.
mhm,
Um, but the poetry is really profound, right? And there's no good way to say this. I just felt like I was the wrong color. I
mhm.
mean, it's really profound music, poetry, especially Wish. I
Wish.
think is very very deep,
Mhm,
and I don't know. It just seems like it would be tone deaf for me to read it myself on a recording. I do when I'm
mhm,
performing concerts, of course, but yeah,
mhm.
for something that you hope is going to last as sort of a document, I felt it was important to get someone who's African American.
Yeah, that makes
Yeah.
sense. I feel that reading Wish before playing it also would bring a
Be
lot of
pretty hard.
emotion.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Pretty hard because it's so profound. Yeah.
it is. It is. But I encourage people to absolutely check out the CD. Please do purchase it. We'll drop a link in the chat here so people can find it. It's just absolutely amazing. All of these pieces and the red poetry. It's life changing. I really do think so.
Well.
Yeah. Now that that project is I don't know, not done, but it's out there in the world. Are you getting a lot of good feedback from that?
Yes. Yes. Yeah. Nothing but positive rave reviews. Actually, I'm really happy. But I knew that would happen. I mean, her music is so great. You know.
Well, and you performed it well.
Oh, thank you.
So, do you have any tips then for flutists? Some of these pieces are competition pieces, like Danza de
Yeah.
la Mariposas, and often now called for
Yes.
piece. Do you have any tips for flutists learning some of this music?
Wow. Um, give yourself time. Yeah. And I think this is true. This is something I recognize more with very weird contemporary music. Sometimes stuff just takes a while to feel like it belongs together, you know, to assimilate it and sort of feel like it's a whole. And I feel that Valerie's music, because there is so much happening all the time, has a level of intensity to it that's not unlike playing something very weird, you know, contemporary music. So what I'd always suggest is give yourself a little bit more time and try to aim for a performance ready recording or something before you need it, because chances are you're going to listen to that and want to do it again. You know, there'll be things that you don't quite like. So it's tougher, I think, than playing something, say, by Mozart or, you know, sort of normal music, in that those cliches are pretty straightforward. So with Valerie's music, I mean, she really does write stuff that's hard, and there's a lot of detail in things like the length of a rest and stuff like that, which we tend not to pay that much attention to.
Mm,
So I think if you can work on it over time without feeling like you've got to get it all ready and perform it next week, sort of thing,
right.
it's really really helpful. And for the flute and piano music, I definitely recommend practicing it off a score,
Mm,
which is, you know, used to be incredibly difficult to do. Now, I think with iPads and things like that, even a computer, right? Not
mhm,
that you're necessarily going to perform it from a score,
mhm,
but to practice from a score so you can really see how the pieces relate and really understand better what's going on in the piano part before you get to a piano rehearsal. Because you can waste a lot of time in a piano rehearsal just figuring out nuts and bolts. And you really want to do that in your practice time. So when you're actually rehearsing, you can be thinking about the bigger picture details, like, where you want to peak and where the tempo is going to shift and how you want the parts to relate really beautifully. Yeah.
It's a good tip for all music, but especially
I guess.
We tend to skip that part, don't we? We just like to play the part.
Yeah.
Oh, that's fantastic. So I'm wanting to know about this enough that I'm going to go ahead and put up our first comment here from Sarah Jane. So excited to be able to see you today. And can you tell the story of your video while you ride your motorcycle? This is on the homepage of your website. It's alexastill.com, right?
Yes.
And you have this amazing video.
I'm sort of embarrassed to say it's kind of old now. I actually shot that when I was teaching at UC Boulder in Colorado. Yeah. And I just thought it would be cool for people to see me and my bike. And I had this, I still have a Ducati. I have a Ducati Super Sport now. But at the time I had a Ducati Passo, which is sort of like the original wraparound fairing. So if you see bikes, usually Japanese bikes these days have, 2 wheels underneath all this wraparound fairing. So they look kind of like a shrink car, I guess. And I found this film student in Denver who was really keen to be part of it. So it was really fun. He sort of parked himself in various places and had me drive by, and my husband was kind of working as yelling at me instructions and that sort of stuff. It was very fun. And then I haven't gone to update it because I haven't lived anywhere that was quite so pretty since. And I don't know, there's something about Colorado and the views, it's pretty hard to replicate that. Yeah.
You were on the edge of a mountain, and really, everyone needs to go check it out because it is fabulous. You ride the motorcycle to the edge of the mountain, and then you pull your flute out of this tube case and just play beautiful music while you're still in full motorcycle.
My leathers, yeah.
It's amazing. Motorcycle riding seems almost like a risky habit for a flutist. I'm always afraid if I'm rollerblading, I'll fall on my hands. And how did you get started motorcycling?
Well, I mean, it was one of those things. Necessity was a mother. I went to the States to study and was coming from New Zealand, where the money was worth a lot less, and people earn a lot less. I really had to be careful about what I could pay for. And I figured out, I wound up living off campus, which was a goof. They didn't put my housing deposit into the right place. And that turned out to be a blessing financially, but transport turned out to be quite tricky. And this is Long Island in New York. So there was like a bus every blue moon sort of thing. So I got a 10-speed, and then when the weather turned and I was carrying around gear and stuff like that, that became a little less wonderful. And then my husband, who was then actually just a friend, rode motorcycles, and I figured out that I could afford to buy a cheap motorcycle and I could afford to insure it, where there was no way I was going to afford to pay insurance on a car. So I found a motorcycle, and he showed me how to drive. And I'm sort of embarrassed to say this, but for about a year, I drove around on a forged international license.
Oh,
yeah. And I was just very lucky I didn't get caught. And then I just kept riding. And of course, now I can afford my car and my insurance and everything like that. And I don't ride my bike every day because I live so close to campus. It sort of takes longer to put on all the gear than it would be to just sort of walk to my office. But there's something really, really wonderful about riding a motorcycle. It's like you're a part of what's going on around you. When you're in a car, you feel like you're in a test tube and everything's sealed off. So there's something meditative about it too, and that you have to be 100% focused, right? You have to assume everybody doesn't see you. You have to be looking out for crap on the road all the time. So it's a very involving sort of thing to do, and very addictive. But I would be the first person to say it's dangerous as heck. And I've been very, I've been very lucky. I've been extremely lucky that I haven't had a major wreck. I had an accident, but it was off my bicycle, actually, not off my motorcycle. Yes. So with my motorcycle, the worst I've done is I've rear-ended my husband, and I've actually done that in quite spectacular fashion.
If you're going to do something, do it spectacularly.
Yes. Oh my God. I actually wrecked one of his bikes by driving into the back of it. But so far I haven't been hit by a car. And that's the major thing, is to try not to get hit. Yeah. So if you're interested in motorcycles, you have to be really aware of the fact that it's very dangerous. You have to get really good gear, full face helmets. They have wonderful gloves now that have carbon fiber knuckle protectors, and set of leathers, or there's so much really good gear now that's not even that heavy. A lot of the synthetic stuff is terrific. But I think you also have to just pretend that no one else sees you all the time. So you're driving very defensively. And most people have their wrecks in the first 6 months of driving. And I think that's part of the learning process, actually. Yeah.
I feel like, and you'll know better than I will, but I feel like you were bright red in that video. It would be hard to miss you.
Yes, that's on purpose.
Yes, you were shining in red. Amazing. So what brought you then to the United States from New Zealand?
Oh, this is kind of a funny story, really. When I was a kid, well, you have to imagine New Zealand is very small, because it is. There are 4 million people in New Zealand, and actually about 1 million of those are overseas. So 3 million people in the country the size of the UK, and there are 3 major music departments, which seems ridiculous, and I still think is probably not a great idea, because you have basically not enough population to support that. So they're kind of struggling to maintain enough mass to actually operate properly. And when I was a student at Auckland University, I actually didn't have a teacher for 2 years.
Wow.
And I look back on that and I'm like, what was I thinking? What were they thinking? How on any planet is that okay? But I was young, and it was just the way it was, so I didn't have a teacher. And I flew myself to the capital city and got a few lessons occasionally from the guy who played principal flute in the New Zealand Symphony. That's a job I took over later. But I really didn't have instruction. So I was very interested in listening to recordings and what I could find out about teachers online. Well, at that time, it was like reading books and articles, and this is really before the internet was a big thing. And I figured out that I really thought American players did a wonderful job of playing what was on the page. And this probably says a lot about my mindset at that time, when really my idea of flute playing was play through as many pieces as possible. So I decided I wanted to come to the States, which for a New Zealander was pretty weird, because most New Zealanders went to the UK or Europe. So I came to the States, and I figured out that I wanted to study with Thomas Nyfinger, but I couldn't afford Yale, and I didn't even send in my application in the end. And Sam Barron, because those were the guys I'd heard on recordings. And Mr. Barron, bless him, accepted me, and probably because I came from a funky place, And I went to the State University of New York at Stony Brook, which I could actually afford to do. And I went with enough money to hang in there for a year. And when the year came up, I sort of said to him, well, look, I've run out of money, I have to go home. And they gave me a teaching assistantship, so I was able to stay. And so the teaching thing, I think I was so desperate to have good lessons, and so desperate to have good instruction. I wound up studying with Sam Barron, who knew Tom Neuenschwander, and they were quite good friends. And sort of in a father-son way, Sam Barron thought that Thomas Neuenschwander was sort of a genius and looked after him in some ways. So I studied with both of them, which is a very unusual situation. And I feel very lucky to have been in the right spot with both of them, and probably mentally, in that I was desperate. And I was desperate for instruction. And I put up with Mr. Neuenschwander being a really kind of an asshole.
Oh.
But I mean, he knew what he was doing, right? So I would have put up with anything, probably. Yeah. So I feel very lucky. And Stony Brook turned out to be a fantastic spot for me. And I had teaching assistantship, and I also worked in the late night study lounge between like 1 and 4 a.m., you know, things you do. But terrific spot for me. I'm very grateful. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's fabulous. So before that, were you primarily self-taught?
Well, I wouldn't say primarily self-taught, but I had a series of 4 teachers. The first one, I saw his flute. And then the other guys, I never saw their flutes. And I look back on that, and that's kind of weird, but that's how it was, you know. And yeah, by the time I got to my teacher at the beginning of my undergraduate, Cyril Haworth, had actually studied with William Kincaid. So he was a good teacher. And I started working with him when I was about 14. But it was kind of like ships passing in the night, in that he would say awesome stuff, and I totally didn't get it. And the only reason I'm aware of this is because my mum would come to my lessons and take notes. And it was like, you know, a sort of a 90-minute schlep from my parents' house. As soon as I got a driver's license when I was 16, she like set me on my way, and I just drove myself. And I have vivid memories of being incredibly stressed about getting lost. And these notebooks of things where he was saying great stuff, and mum was writing it down, and it was like whoosh, over my head. So yeah, I wouldn't say self-taught, but largely self-guided might be a better word. Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting.
Until I got to the States, until I had good teachers. And then my playing, you know, kind of a horrendous transformation. Yeah.
Oh. Was it a lot of change once you started studying then in the United States? Yes.
Yes. I mean, I really think I came to the States and probably had very minimal vibrato. Like, we're talking massive shift. I think I was pretty good in the technique department, but in terms of musicality, I don't think I'd ever really even thought about what a phrase is. Scary, huh?
I'm sure that informs your teaching, though. You probably have students that the information goes right over, and you understand how that is.
Yeah, and I think probably because I changed so much about my playing kind of relatively recently, right? I really have empathy for people doing things the wrong way. And I think I'm pretty clear-headed about what I think needs to happen for someone to play easily, you know. So, yeah, I think that's been a benefit for sure.
Well, I wanted to ask you, as a professor then, someone who I imagine has sat in on many auditions, do you have any audition tips for those preparing to audition to schools, or you've won major orchestra auditions? Any tips for those taking those auditions?
Yeah, okay, so for college auditions, I think it's really important to be very super organized, you know, and that helps with most things, unfortunately, but especially college auditions, because it's kind of a drawn-out process with so much music. And I think for a lot of high school students, that's the first time they've dealt with that. So the first thing I'd say is get really organized. Have a spreadsheet with all the schools and the repertoire they're requiring, and you know, the deadlines for when you have to get stuff sent in, and to make sure that you're working on as fewer pieces as possible. Because sometimes this, you know, school A will ask for this and school B asks for that. And, you know, before you know it, you've got this like armful of repertoire. And it's, of course, much easier to work on less numbers of pieces. So to get organized like that, try to make one piece count for more things rather than learn extra pieces. And I often get asked, what should I play? And I think that question is just wrong. You know, there are pieces you have to play because the school requires it. But beyond that, you want to play pieces that show off what you do best. So it's, you know, what do I do best is the question, really. And everybody, I mean, if you don't know what you do best, ask your teacher or ask your friends, you know, but find what you do best, because that audition is you selling yourself as being, you know, this wonderful up and coming person with potential. So you want to put your best foot forward. So don't pay any attention to what you think they want to hear. It's really more about what shows you off best. And I think the same bit of advice I gave earlier, record before you think you need to, because you might want to do some of it again. And I think it's really important for the first time you do recording, it takes quite a long time to get the mic set in the right place, you know, to get the balance right between the flute and piano and get a good sound. And, you know, you can mess with that after the recording, but it's really helpful to have a good sound at the beginning of the recording process, and that will sound more natural. So a lot of people spend a recording session just figuring out placement of microphones. You know, you record a bit and you listen back and see what you think about that, and then you try something else. And it's very time consuming. So yeah, make sure you're working with things with a lot of time to spare to kind of have another go at it. And, you know, if you haven't recorded before, it's very easy to think, well, I can do it again. You know, I can just hit the re-record button. But it all takes time. So it's really kind of important to imagine that you're going into a performance. You really feel like you can play it all the way through. Because probably the best performance is going to be the second or third time through. And after that, it'll be downhill. But if you are at the stage where you're still making silly mistakes, then what could be a pretty efficient process is going to turn into a never-ending saga. It's recording is an art in itself. It's really terrible. Yeah. And I think for orchestra auditions, I strongly recommend getting Sharon Sparrow's 6 Weeks to Audition Success. I think it's just such a helpful, user-friendly, practical guide of everything laid out. She covers doing mock auditions and all sorts of things. And I think it's pretty important with auditions to get used to the idea of playing for people and getting somewhat limited feedback. You don't really want people to reinvent everything you're doing. But if you play for, say, 5 people and you ask them for their top, you know, say 5 or 10 comments, and there's some things in common from those people making comments, then you know that's something you really need to address. So Sharon Sparrow covers all that really, really well in her book. It's great.
That's a fabulous book. I studied with Sharon, and that is my guide as well. Wonderful, wonderful. I do have another question from Sarah Jane.
Yeah.
What adventures do you have coming up?
Oh my gosh.
I love the word adventures there. It's so great.
Sarah Jane knows me well. Yeah. I am playing a couple of pieces coming up pretty soon, which are pretty cool. I'm doing a piece, I'm just trying to remember her name, Gabriella, Intricacies for Flute and Strings, which is kind of a play on Brandenburg concertos. And it's just this wonderful piece. And I've played it before, and it's for a bunch of strings and harpsichord. And so we've got this kind of funky sound of, you know, kind of slightly Baroque stuff, but the music all kind of goes slightly out of sync. And it's wonderful. And I'm really looking forward to doing that. That's in September. And I'm going to perform, we're going to do the world premiere of Paul Dessen's Concerto for 2 Flutes and Orchestra. And Paul Dessen is this amazing Venezuelan composer. Unfortunately, he died of a heart attack in the summer.
Right.
And I was trying to propose this piece for the NFA, for their concerto concert in the convention,
Mhm.
and we were declined, but we're going to go ahead and play it anyway. The piece is quite long and quite challenging, so I can imagine there's lots of really good reasons it didn't get accepted. But
Perhaps
I
next
did.
year.
I did, with one of my students, help me out doing a demo recording of a bit of each of the movements,
Mm.
and it's got the most amazing connection to nature. It has frog sounds in it, and Venezuelan popular music influence, and it's just this incredible hodgepodge of stuff, and very listenable, but quite hard. And we managed to get in this sort of sample recording. It was the first time he'd heard any of it, and he was ecstatic about it. So I'm so glad that happened while he was alive. And now we want to do this premiere, and I really hope we can at least get a recording out there, because there are some good, two flute concertos, but nothing like this. Nothing like this. Yeah. So I'm very excited about that. Yeah, really great piece. So those are my upcoming adventures. I have a lot of practice to do.
We all do. I've got one more question here from you, from
Whoa.
Teresa, or Teresa. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
What is your
What's your favorite
piece
piece?
to play?
This is such a tricky question. Whenever I get asked this, I'm like, oh my God, which one? It's like, which is your favorite child? I think at the moment I would have to say Requiem Milonga on Valerie Coleman, by Valerie Coleman. It's this little piece. When I heard her play it in a concert, I was sitting there and I remember sort of being quite puzzled, trying to figure out if she was just improvising, because it sounds so sort of slightly jazzy and very free, but it's all written out and it's not very well known. And every time I've played this, people are very, they pick that piece out for commentary. It's just so gorgeous. And I just think it's really special. And if you don't know it, you should try and buy the music. It's a pretty straightforward piece. It's got a lot of very high soft A flats, but you can use the fingering we add in the right hand and make sure it's sharp enough. Or if you've got a C sharp trill key, woohoo! Then there's a lot of fantastic fingerings for high A flat with the C sharp trill key. If you use that, then it's quite easy to sit up there and make it sound gorgeous. And yeah, great piece.
I've never used my C sharp trill key for high A flat, so when we're off here, I'm gonna have you notate that for me. I'll share it with others. Won't take the time now for the non-flutists, but that piece is on the CD as well, so they can also listen to it, and then they'll want to go buy it, of course.
Wow.
Absolutely. And you'll send us the trick fingerings.
Yes, I absolutely will. Absolutely.
That's fabulous. So as I get to the bottom of my coffee cup, I know that it's about time for us to part ways and ready for our FluteSpresso Express round. The idea is that we are now caffeinated, maybe not you, you have decaf, but that's okay. We're energized by the time together. And there's a couple express questions for you to answer. So today I'm doing FluteSpresso favorites, starting with, what is your favorite coffee or tea?
Well, I have to admit to having to be decaffeinated due to being careful about tinnitus. I played an orchestra for 11 years, and like a lot of orchestra players, I have a little bit of hearing damage. So when I drink caffeinated things, my tinnitus is quite noticeable. It sounds like chirpy things. If I don't drink caffeinated stuff, I don't have any of it. So it's really hard because I adore coffee. So I have to do decaf. I quite like chais though. So sometimes I cheat and I have chai, which has, of course, caffeine in it, but small amount.
We won't tell anyone.
Yeah, and I pay for it. Wow. So the coffee I'm drinking right now is donut decaf Keurig type coffee. At home, I drank an Ohio brewer, coffee maker, coffee brewer. I'm not sure what you use. Roaster, coffee roaster. Okay.
Brewmaster.
Yes.
Person I
I'd
need in
like
my
to-
life is what I usually say.
Oh my God. Not enough caffeine.
I'm a bit addicted. We'll go to the next FluteSpresso favorite. What is your favorite Valerie Coleman piece to play? I think you kind of already answered this.
Yes, that would be
Yeah.
Requiem. Yep.
Mm-hmm. What is your favorite place to visit?
Oh, New Zealand. Oh my gosh. Yes. Wow. I'm from a very beautiful country, but it's very far away, and I don't get to go there very often, especially the pandemic. I
Right.
literally couldn't get in there. Yeah. It's hard because it's about 2 hours by the time you travel. 2 days by the time you travel. So, for me to find enough time to go down to be there for long enough to make that worthwhile is a bit tricky.
Mm-hmm.
But I always love going home. I just like walk off the plane. It smells different. It looks different, and I just feel like I'm home. Yeah.
That warms my heart. What is your favorite album to listen to?
Oh, my famous no, that's right. My famous Blue Raincoat, Leonard Cohen songs, and I forget the name of the singer, but it's just the most beautiful disc, and I think it's so well regarded as a recording thing that it's used by people to test out stereo gear, but I just love his songs. Yeah.
Do you have a favorite place to perform?
Wow.
I know I read a long list of countries you've performed. So this is tough.
The places I think I enjoy performing most, it's actually more about the audience. It's like when you're performing, I'm sure everybody can relate to this. When you're performing, there's something like about you've got like this antenna out about how the audience is responding. And I've played in some magnificent venues, but the places I really enjoy performing are small places and where the audience knows each other. And there's something different about that experience. They're very comfortable and they're having a great time and the rapport seems very easy. So my favorite places are actually places that you'd sort of scoff at in terms of venues.
I wouldn't scoff at it, but perhaps somewhat. All right. So my last question: do you have a favorite motorcycle? It may be like asking about your favorite child. I'm not sure.
Well, yes, I had Ducati Passos for a long time, and they're really wonderful machines. But they stopped making them quite a while ago, and so keeping them up and running is a little challenging. So my favorite bike now is my current bike, a Ducati Super Sport, which is kind of like a bare bones version of the Passo. It's air cooled and doesn't have that much fairing on it even, and handles beautifully.
All right, we're waiting for a new video.
Great.
It's been a pleasure talking to you today, Alexa. Absolutely. Please, everyone out there, check out the CD, Wish, featuring 5 new recordings of Valerie Coleman's music. Wonderful renditions performed by Alexa Still. Thank you, everyone, for being here with us today. And thank you, Alexa, for your time.
Thank you, everybody. And thank you for all the wonderful comments on the chat.